My name is Sheila Johnson-Smith. I was the executive director at the Grand Bahama Children's Home when Dorian hit.
Yeah. Are you a native Grand Bahamian?
And a proud one. A proud 8 Mile Rock Grand Bahamian.
Like my grandmother. So as a Grand Bahamian, you've likely weathered many storms,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Which ones before Dorian stick out in your mind and why? Maybe
it would be Francis and Jean.
Okay.
Francis and Jean was really devastating. I remember that very clearly because my sister refused to move out of Marok that time, and the last communication we had from her was from the family was, we're running because the roof was coming off, was lifting off the house. So that was devastating. And then to be without utilities for 6 weeks, it was really, really, really difficult. You know, so that hurricane and they were only 3 weeks apart,
right.
So we didn't have an opportunity to even catch ourselves. Yeah.
So in what ways was Dorian like previous storms, like in terms of Grand Bahamians' anxieties or fears or preparations? Did it feel the same? Did it feel different?
It felt a little more intense, but you know, Bahamians, the last minute, everything was sold out. Everybody was in the streets. Everybody was at the getting their gasoline, filling their cars, going to the food stores. Hurricane supplies was not in. It was not readily available.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people from the international community looking at us, I think, believe that we either knew different, should have known different. I don't want to say better, but definitely their perspective of the storm was very different than ours, and especially their idea that there was somewhere that we could go.
Well, I could tell you one thing with Dorian. Dorian shocked everybody. My mother, our family home, after my mother returned to Grand Bahama, my family returned to Grand Bahama, was in, we considered almost the middle of the island. Every hurricane almost, the family who lived in 8 Mile Rock, the immediate family, they always came up. And nothing ever happened.
Right.
But to open the door in that and see the amount of water that it just shocked us. No, I don't think anybody expected. We knew that how the weather was coming, and we've weathered so much hurricane, so many, but this one was unprecedented.
I think you raise an interesting point. It's the point that the international community doesn't understand is that, you know, the flooding in areas of Freeport was absolutely unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
I mean, there were, you know, there are certain low-lying areas, low-lying intersections, but
it has never, the water coming from the north side of the island has never reached so far inland.
Correct.
And that has never, ever happened. And we felt quite secure because we know we've never experienced it at the house, at the homestead.
Right.
And you were laughing, talking, playing games, and you say, "It's water on this floor." And we jumped up and went out and opened the door, and then there was this ocean. It was just an ocean outside the door. We panicked, of course, because it's never happened. And I can tell you one thing, the most difficult thing, and I was just talking about it, was the experience of trying to get to safety, because all of us were trying to get to safety. Water almost up to here. From where we lived to the fire station, because it was on a little higher ground. But we were able to get to the fire station, and I think we just were traumatized and in shock. When we got to the fire station had almost 500 people in it,
wow.
who
And so which station would this have been?
This is the station, the new fire station on Settlers Highway. And my dear, let me tell you, it was horrendous. I still have flashbacks. I still think about the time trying to get there. Finally, the car started because a tornado hit our house, hit the house next door, then hit our house where we were at, and then hit the next neighbor house. So all of that trauma, trying to get, and I'll never forget looking at my older sister. And I get emotional when I think about it. The terror on her face. And all you could see in her eyes was, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. That was all you could see in her eyes. And she was walking in the water, we got the car to start, and I grabbed her and said, get in this car. And I pulled her into the car, and the car never touched the ground. It floated. And on the way to the fire station, all you saw were cars floating. When we got there, the firemen and the police came running out. When they saw the door open, they said, we thought it was an empty car just floating away. And they helped us. I've never been through anything like that in my life. And I hope never to do that again.
I know. I think, back to what you referred to earlier is this kind of false safety that Freeport settlers had, Freeport proper people who lived in the city, a developed city, a modern city by all measures, with codes and building codes, construction codes, all these things that have gone a great length to keep us safe.
Absolutely.
Prior to this. And so, you have a sister, you have family members who you love, you've convinced them to leave their unsafe settlement, which in this instance though,
was the safest.
Turned out to be the safest.
Yes,
right?
because it was so funny that my niece and sister's house, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing, absolutely nothing happened in 8 Mile Rock. By the water's right there. The ocean is right there.
You can see it in the morning. Hello, hello.
You could say hello in the morning to the ocean.
I think that's the way international people think all people in the Bahamas live. But that is the way that they live. They can literally see the ocean.
They can see the ocean.
And so when you think about the people who populated that fire station for safety, what housing or development communities would you say that would represented there? Like, where do you think those people came from?
They came from Arden Forest, they came from Hudson Estate, they came from Yeomanwood, all of those areas. That water just Heritage, the water just came.
It came.
The water just came. I can't say it any more simply. The water just came.
I think it's important to the people to understand that the water just didn't come down. The water came onto land.
Onto land, and it's like what happened in New Orleans.
Yeah.
The water came. The levee broke in New Orleans. We had no levee.
Yeah.
So the water came because we were in the ocean, and it just came came inland.
So you're dealing with all of that in your personal life, in your home, your family, but you also have been given charge for the care of the many children who reside in the children's home. So what are your thoughts at that time about where they are, what they're doing, how are they doing? How many of them approximately were you responsible for? What ages were they? I mean, are they small children, big children? Are they at the home?
They were at the home. We never expected the water to go come in that far, and they were at the home. 30 children. I had 10 workers on. What we did, we placed there are two facilities, residential facilities, where they sleep and live. So we put all the children in one building with all the workers, because the second building was used for the teenagers who live in the village. Who's also, these children, of course, come from government. They're the government's children, but we care for them. And so the teenagers were in one building, and my children were in one building. The ages for the children was 4 months.
Oh wow, that's
from
really
4
young.
months to 12 years old, and 30 of them. So that's why we had about 10 workers on to make sure if anything happened, you can help. We'd have enough hands. But I got the call telling me that the water was coming. So what happens is that the Department of Social Services, who the children come through, they are responsible for the safety of the children and moving the children if they had to be moved. They've done it in the past, so they were well versed in doing that. And so the call went out to the command center. The command center sent the police and defense force down there, and they took all the children out of there and took them to Alukaya for safety, because the water was not really coming in like that on that side.
And so, on the one hand, you have the water coming into the home. On the other hand, you have the water coming into the children's home.
Yeah, and from a different side.
And so, how are you managing that at the time? I mean, you're aware of all of these variables happening all at once.
Yes, I'm being kept up to date by the supervisors, because I was not on property. I've been kept up to date by the supervisors because we've gone through it so many times with the hurricane, and they told me that they were safe. The command center told me they were safe in the hotel, but it was such a rush. But one thing that we always did when I was there was that during a hurricane, we packed sufficient clothing and food in the event that the children has to be moved, and medicine and all that. So all of those were prepared. Just grab the children and get out. But I had a video of that where the children were not actually getting out of the home, but the defense force was taking them, and the water was like this.
Right.
Yeah. It was horrendous. And those children, the thing about it is, the minute the hurricane was gone, I was out of there along with a couple of my admin staff. I got a hold of them. I'm on my way to Alukai where the children, because I kept them informed with myself. So all of us went to Alukai to check on our children. I'll never forget the children. When they saw us, they ran to us. And I picked up one of the little ones, and I was holding him. And he looked at me and he said, "Miss Smith, I thought we were gonna die." And then some of the other kids, when they saw us, they started crying, but they knew that everybody was safe, And then, of course, that was heartbreaking. That was really heartbreaking for the little children,
I know.
to go through that.
And I feel like in terms of the way in which we process trauma, that children are so very resilient.
They are.
And perhaps it leads us to neglect those difficult conversations because we don't want to relive it. But, for most of us, we haven't ever faced so many traumas in our young life as they already would have at that point.
Exactly.
And so this is just the pylon, right?
Yes.
Because they've already endured so much, right? They've already been resilient. I mean, at a certain point, we tired. They tired, we tired. Because I didn't even go to the home to see the home yet. We didn't go to the home yet. We just went to check on the children, because that was first and foremost. So during the days they were there, we kept taking things. We made sure that, and social services made sure they had things. But let me tell you something. When we went to the home after we left the children, I felt like I was breaking into tears, just tears from everybody. But the friends of the home, I have a group of people called, when I was there, they were called the friends of the home. These, most of them are expat ladies, but of course they made their husband work too. But these women were so genuine
with their care for these children. And they had a feeding program that they had private parties, they raised funds. They had something called the Christmas Carnival every December for families to come down to the home. And they raised the funds, put it in an account for whenever we needed food. And so several of them, because one of them suffered total loss of their house. Several of them came and met me at the home. So we're all crying because they have been so deeply involved, intimately involved with not only raising funds, they made themselves available to the children. They used to come and read to the ones who were not in school, so they knew all the children. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for them, we would have been, I don't know where, because they came and they got down to brass knuckles, mucking out the places. I mean, they worked so hard trying to, because the home was totally, except for the buildings, everything was lost. Everything. The whole buildings had to be gutted. And then, it's the issue of mold. So they had to take out all the studs, everything. So it's a brand new build.
Right, and you're talking about a home that sits in a community that is also devastated.
Absolutely.
So there's devastation on top of devastation. Trauma
yes.
on top of trauma.
I'll tell you the story what happened. We were there trying to clean the home. Let me tell you how bad it was in Grand Bahama. We're taking a break, sitting on the porch of the office. I see this lady, two ladies walking towards the home with this child in their hand. So I'm wondering if this is a relative and want to know what happened to the children. So the lady said, she said, "Good afternoon." I said, "Hi, how are you?" She said, "I need to speak to somebody who's in charge." I said, "Well, that's me. What can I do to help you?" She did this number. I kid you not. "Can you take my baby, please? I have no place to go. I have no place to go. Take my baby, please." Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing for me was, "I'm so sorry. I can't help you. But I'll try. I will contact social services. Mm-hmm. And I'll try to get you someplace with your baby and your mother." Because she had a mother. She said, "We lost everything." And so I was able to contact social services. And I must tell you, they rose to the occasion. They really helped that lady, her mother, and that baby, so she was able to keep her baby.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that happened several times where people came and asked if we could keep the baby. I said, "Look, there's no place."
So at this point, where are you then housing the children?
While this is going on, the children, the Friday after the hurricane, because the hurricane came on a Sunday, Royal Caribbean.
And I'm very impressed that you know the days, mind you, because after Hurricane Dorian, we knew no days. We didn't know
exactly.
Monday, Tuesday. It was
exactly.
a day. Every day was a day to find water.
What? It was always a struggle every day.
Every day. I mean, I literally did not know what day it was. So
That's how bad it is.
That your recall can even provide you with some semblance of the days. It's really, really impressive.
And I'm old.
No, that's the administrator in you. Like, hold on, let me remember my days,
And that Friday, Royal Caribbean came in and took people who wanted to go to Nassau. Mm-hmm. And so the children, social services arranged for the children to be housed in 3 different residential facilities in Nassau, and they stayed there for a year. Because the massive amount of work that had to be done was unbelievable to that home. And of course, you had the delays with the pandemic, and so everything was pushed back. Mm-hmm. And children finally came. They were supposed to come on October 2nd, which would have been my retirement date. But someone in the party had COVID. So the children, everybody had to go in quarantine, so it was pushed back. And so unfortunately, I didn't see the kids return because I had made other commitments that I could not let go.
But the island wanted them.
Yes, because we, FIDA, the Federation of International Lawyers, Women Lawyers, and Rotary Clubs. We had a meeting, they got together, they decided to, for the October 2nd return, because we had everything planned, everything was still there, and at the last minute, everything had to be canceled, postponed, like not canceled, but postponed. They decided, you know the story of the tie yellow ribbon, because the soldiers are waiting for them to come back. So that's, Rotary Clubs and FIDA painted Grand Bahama in yellow. You know, they went on the media and asked people to tie ribbons on their cars, on their houses, on their businesses, in their yards, and people went all out for that. It was a great disappointment that they didn't come on that particular day. I mean, even the contractor, Spartan Builders, who was rebuilding, every car, every vehicle they had big yellow ribbons on it. And it was, they were able to come the following weekend. And so there were still yellow ribbons, and it was awesome from what I saw, yeah.
I wonder if you want to talk a bit about, the heroes, be they institutions or people who you feel really stepped up when the home was in this particular need emerging from Dorian. You mentioned the women's organizations, the Rotary Clubs, and of course Spartan Builders, that I know is.
And they did more than they did more than they should have if they were just going by the book.
Right.
But they put their heart and soul and gave us so much more, gave the home so much more than you could pay for, to be honest with you. We had international help. The Lions Club out of Melbourne, I think it is. They send wash and dry, all kinds of things. People were calling me constantly. My cell phone was any time of the day or night, 24/7. My cell phone was going. We had the Lions Club. We had Kiwanis out of Canada, the international branch, paid for all the appliances. I worked with them and got the listing, got the cost, and they gave me a check for $30,000 for the appliances. Family Guardian, who has always been a supporter of the children's home. Every year, they have something at the home for Founders Day for the children. And so we had a long-standing relationship. And I heard from them out of Nassau, and they said, what can we do? I said, we need the library and a classroom. They said, okay, here's $30,000. On top of that, they bought wheelchairs, because we had 2 children in wheelchairs. They bought wheelchairs, and they bought a tablet for every child. Even the babies got their tablets to play their games on.
Right.
The Private Banking Institute in Nassau, whose headquarters is in Switzerland, Lombardi Odia, along with one of the friends at home, we worked with them, $100,000. There was a contest of who they were going to give it to. So we won! Yeah, and you had people, because Grandma was so devastated, they couldn't do anything. Grandma couldn't do anything. But we had people internationally, out of Nassau. Somebody, Head Nose Foundation, 30 beds, bunk beds. a group out of Richardson. He has a foundation. This must have since 70.
Wow.
Then you had Albany. Albany was amazing. They gave us actually almost 250,000.
Wow.
They built a building for us. They bridge the cost between what it costs from the insurance to rebuild and what it costs to finish, and they bridged that. Plus, they built a laundry and storage facility. Albany was amazing, absolutely amazing.
I think
I can't call everybody's name, but that I think that I can do that.
Suffice it to say, you must have been a pretty exhausted lady.
Absolutely exhausted. And then I was the project manager for the rebuild.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it was. I had told my staff before the hurricane, I said that I'm tired, I'm old.
You're not old.
Well, older, and I can't do this anymore, because when I returned, this is not as a social worker, I was a administrator at the home, and when I came back when the home was on the brink of closing, I came back and I worked, Jane, Havana, and myself, we worked, and my staff worked to constantly get the word out that the home was in need. The home was in need. It was on the brink of, like I said, of closing. And so it was not easy.
Yeah.
It was not easy. 24/7, phone, online, constantly trying to get people to buy into the need for the children's home.
And I know that a great part of both your feeling and the feeling of those who worked alongside you must have been always that the children belonged in their home.
Yes.
Right? So how do you put that kind of anxiety in the back of your mind while you rebuild the home? I mean, is it in part that you just do what you have to do? Is it also that are you maintaining contact with them at this time?
Yes. Going up to visit them and all of that, spending time with them. Me and my admin staff have gone up and spent time while they were in Nassau, gone and met with them. But most of my time was spent on that property. I tell people all the time, I didn't have time to think about the fact that because I was living on property as well, that I lost everything myself. I lost everything.
You know that most people don't know that, right?
They didn't?
I didn't.
Yeah. I lost everything as well. Because I was on property until I was 24/7, being there. Staff calling you 1 and 2 o'clock, the police calling, immigration is calling. Can you, Miss Smith, can you keep this child for us overnight? Can you, when things happen, because they can't reach, of course, middle 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, they can't reach social services, so they call me and man, you need to keep this child for us. We just lock up the parents or something like that. So the home was always a place of safety.
So you're doing this, and you've also lost everything. So this is a lot. So while you're managing the rebuild of the home, then what is going on in your personal home?
What is going on is that I'm living in my sister's place, but I was also building a new home at the time. Thank God, what was built wasn't destroyed.
Okay.
But I was like, the thing about it was that I couldn't think other than, we got to get these children home. We've got to get these children home. The children need to be home. And the parents, most of the parents who have contact with their children, found my number from somewhere and kept calling me. How my baby, but because you have to understand that some of the circumstances that these children find themselves in the home, sometimes one of one of the parents had no control. You know, because, it's a lot of them are single parents, and so there's no mother and father in the home per se. And so sometimes they never knew what was happening because all manner of things, I felt sometimes that I couldn't wait because I was done. Emotionally, physically, I was done. I was so tired.
Spent.
I was totally spent. And I had told my staff before Hurricane Dorian, I say, December, that's it for me in December. I'm just tired. I'm gonna leave. So only my admin staff knew that. At least only 3 of them knew that I had planned on leaving. But then Hurricane, God has a sense of humor. Hurricane Dorian came, so that was pushed back. So the day of the return, I was out. That was it.
The day of the return. I remember seeing that afar and thinking, this is one way to go. If you have to go, this is the way. Triumphant.
Yes.
Even though COVID presented its
challenges, much challenge,
and we still persist in spite of them today. But what a way to go. You didn't drop the ball. You didn't leave it mid-court. You didn't give up the shot. It's like the Michael Jordan.
But you have to know too that you're tired, your bodies. And I tell people, one of the reporters asked me, say, how are you going to leave your children? I say, if I don't, I will die. And I don't want to be one of those persons who work themselves into the ground. And once they retire, they die. I want to live. I want to have fun again. I remember when I used to wear high heels a lot. So I wanted to have fun.
Too.
Yes.
I used to be a summer.
Yes.
I remember those days. I wonder then, what are the lessons that you think Oprah would say that God would have us to learn? Like, what do you think that having experienced this is just something or some things that should stand out at the front of our minds?
Listen and pay attention and heed warnings. You have to do that. I honestly feel that all those lives that were lost in Grand Bahama and Abaco is a different situation, but Grand Bahama didn't have to go. It did not have to go. But we feel, especially the older generation, some of them, I've weathered so many storms and hurricanes and I'm still here. And people say, well, God will protect me. God took away your sin, not your senses. That's my position. And I'm not going to really criticize them because the families are hurting still. Because it's massive loss of lives. But I just feel like some of those could have been prevented.
Yeah, I think it's always the case that, we would, hindsight, right? Hindsight in every instance. And, one of the things that I often say about that is, had everyone left every settlement and came into Freeport,
we would all die. The good thing about the south side was pretty good. They hardly got touched.
Barely.
Because,
barely. I
just think it
was in Caravelle Beach.
Yeah.
The water came all the way from the airport to East Sunrise Highway.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And still some in Caravelle Beach proper were underwater. And so basically you're talking about,
what did you do?
A mile to maybe 2 miles to the ocean on the south side,
But you remember when it came from the south side, what it did? Tremendous. The boulders were like this.
I remember the day before being an 8 Mile Rock and seeing a little old lady in a little boarded house, actually on the side of the ocean, on the seaside, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I hope she makes it. I hope she leaves. She has to leave. Oh my God. And she probably didn't leave.
And she survived.
And she made it. And here I was in Freeport,
yeah.
the city. And, so many of us did not make it. Many, many more of us might not have made it.
And I think it's because the Freeport is the widest part of the island. People would have gone to seek shelter. Because when you think of Western and what happened in Western and how it is narrow at both ends.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that has being in Freeport was logical.
Yes,
But,
definitely.
But it did not work out quite as we expected. But you can't predict that most of the time. You don't know what's going to happen. Nobody expected what happened. That 70% of the island would be covered with water. That is unprecedented.
What is your hope for Grand Bahama and for Grand Bahamians in general, and for your children at the children's home in particular?
My hope is that we don't have that kind of weather again in our lifetime or their lifetime, and that my children grow up to be contributing members of society. Unfortunately, we've had some cases where, even under my time, when one of my former children committed murder. But that's not what we want. We want them to live. We want them to be educated. We want them to thrive and not just survive. That's what I pray for the children. But I would also go on to say that as for Bahamians in Grand Bahama itself, we have been on survival mode from 2004. I'm tired. Bahamians are tired. Grand Bahamians are tired.
Tired up.
Tired up. Okay? You're absolutely right, Crystal. And so, Grand Bahamians need to see a light at the end of some tunnel. Because, like I say, you know what happens when there's a disaster? There's a lot of deaths after the disaster.
Oh, yes. Well, that's
and that is what has happened.
But I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. But,
no,
those like hurricane disaster adjacent deaths.
Yes.
That from the trauma, you have a lot of people in old age. They just seem to fall away.
Yeah, and we don't pay enough attention to them. People are hurting badly from 2004 to now.
I wonder if the same is true though with your children in particular, and all children just in general, that because we force ourselves to move on, to press on,
we bury so much stuff. Yeah. We bury so much stuff, and internally it kills us. We die inside because it's poison. It's absolute poison. Because, I cannot think about how I feel because I have to feed these children.
Yes.
I have to go there and feed these children. My feelings don't count. Yeah. And unfortunately, where mental health is concerned, we have basically almost dismissed it. I don't have time to be upset. I don't have time to be emotional. I have to work.
I
don't. I have to keep going. I did that with Hurricane Dorian. The fact that I almost lost my life, I couldn't think about that. I thought about the children. The children not used to Nassau. The children have to hurry up and come home. That was my focus. I didn't have any time to mourn.
And then you have a pandemic.
And then you have the pandemic. So you can imagine.
So you have a lagging economy.
A stopped economy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then a storm ravaged economy. And then a pandemic challenged economy.
3 in 1. 3 in 1. It's hard to come back from that. It's very difficult. Unless you live it. Or like how you come home and spend 3 months, or you see. See, let me tell you something. people are not as caring in some instances as they used to be, because people are chasing the almighty dollar and their own selfishness. So they don't have time to think about, oh, they had a disaster. Okay, I have to go to the bank and I have to get that. People are hurting. People are still hurting from 2004. Emotionally, financially, physically, people are still hurting. But where do you go?
When everybody's
hurting. Where do you go? Thank God if you have somebody who you could talk to once in a while, but nobody wants to hear your problems because they're dealing with their own. So it's like a catch-22.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you brought, and I say if as an adult this is difficult, if not impossible to process.
Sure.
What are we expecting from children who, after so many traumas, so many crises, weathering so many storms, and again, as children,
but children act out when they can express themselves. As a former social worker and as a person who deals with therapy, I have a therapy background. It's very difficult to try to even discipline children right now because they have been through so much. So their only way of expressing what's in them is to act out. And that's what's happening. And as a former executive director at the Grandmama Children's Home, and as a former social worker, I think there's very little I have not seen. Very little. I have
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So you ingest all of that and you try to process. But I may know of ways of coping, but the child does not. Okay, I've been abandoned. You have children who have abandonment issues. I've been abandoned. I've been in a hurricane. Nobody cares about me. Feeding is not enough. Clothing is not enough.
Even a good education is not enough.
And a good education is not enough.
It's like patchwork.
Yeah. And I think you said that's a correct word to use for residents of Grand Bahama, unless you're wealthy. It's patchwork that's going on in Grand Bahama. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that word.
Yeah. One of the, this had been the first storm that I had experienced. I had been away at college.
Right.
And I just remember seeing the kind of glazed over look on people's faces. I mean,
I was one of those, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
This is even before Dorian. I mean, this is like the night before, and I'm the days leading up to him.
Yeah.
In the store, and I'm looking at people, and I'm saying, okay,
you know what they were saying? Not again, Lord.
Not again.
Lord,
and,
not again.
And overhearing the conversations, we just hope, and it's, and it's not, and maybe it won't be that bad. And
it was the worst that I've ever seen. And I'm 100.
No, you're not. but even people who are 100, it is likely the worst that they have ever seen.
I think this is the one. I know they always talk about Hurricane, I think it's Emily or Alma, one of those, in the 1940s or something. And it was a horrible hurricane for the Bahamas. But I hear people saying, not like this. No, not like this.
But we are certainly happy that you made it.
Yes, I'm happy to be here for you.
That the children made it. That you retired and you did not die.
I'm alive and kicking. I'm enjoying life.
But yes, that you are enjoying life and that you're doing so. Being able to sleep at night with the confidence of knowing
I did my best,
and the good conscience of knowing that you did your best.
I feel so. I thank you so much.
In so many instances, our best. Sometimes, as Winston Churchill said, it's just not good enough. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, it was so much more.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Interview by Dr. Crystal A. de Gregory, April 2021. Funding for this interview was provided by the International Organization for Migration Bahamas. Dorian and Beyond, Battered but Not Broken. For more information, please visit us online at www.dorianandbeyond.org.